Suzanne, if you would introduce our guest.
Be delighted.
And we've got another guest coming a little bit later, but right now he's at a concealed carry class, so you got to know he's a friend.
And I'm getting ready. I'll be leaving at about 10:30 to go to get my concealed weapon training.
Excellent.
Yay. I'm going to have a pink revolver. I am ready.
Hey, Marcia.
Anyway, we got this message yesterday from a young woman named Darlene Dolby. She is very active with the Constitutional Party that's based in Stanton. And here's what she asked me to share with each and every one of you. A colonial Christmas celebration sponsored by the Shenandoah Area Working Group. Now that's Dave Mason's term for all of us who are conservatives up and down the valley in our groups, and I'll get a copy emailed over to you, Deb. This event is for all Tea Party members in Shenandoah Valley from Winchester to Roanoke, and for you to make friends with other Tea Party movement followers. The place will be Natural Bridge, Virginia, on Saturday, December 3rd, from 4 p.m. until. Featured speakers will be special guests, and I have heard that Mrs. Madison and General Washington will be in attendance. A talent show by those people who may wish to put together a ripping good dance show. Colonial music and more. If you'd like to come, she'll need a lot of people helping and doing just a little to make this a success. Would you be interested in helping? Food. Receiving food as guests arrive, keeping everything hot, putting food on the table, kitchen clean, and so forth. Needs a greeter, needs talent show people, and other. So too far? Then just 2.5 miles from the event, you can spend the night for only $65. Now, I don't know, how many of you here may know Scott Sayer? Scott Sayer ran for the Virginia Senate 4 years ago, and in the primary against Emmett Hanger, and unfortunately he didn't win. Anyway, that's my own personal opinion. I should get a good one. Anyway, Scott has bought the old Natural Bridge High School and has converted it into a small convention center. This is not the grand opening for it, but it's a big deal for it if we decide to go. So we're going to send out information, and I will also ask when we send this out, Debbie will be sending it out to her Friends for Freedom. I'll be sending, Van, that's what I wanted to talk to you about, Van. Yes, we need to send this out to all of our people so that I would ask you please to RSVP back or at least indicate an interest. So Darlene knows what kind of numbers she's working with, okay? Because Ken and I had already talked about, and Debbie, we thought maybe we would just have a Christmas gathering in December as opposed to a meeting. It doesn't seem quite, by then we're going to know if we were really successful in the state. So if the conservatives have taken over the Virginia Senate, it will be worth it. I'm fine. In any case, that's where we stand at the moment. Just wanted to let you know. Now, it is my privilege. I have heard Jamie speak both in Strasbourg and at the June version of the Suzanne Curran Republican Women's Retreat down in Lynchburg. God, I had a time getting in and out of that town. I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't know how you get around this state. It's hard. Anyway, Jamie is running for the Republican nomination for Senate. The position is currently being held by invisible Senator Jim Webb. We want him gone. Thank you. He's decided to be gone. I have a hunch we'll see him on the ballot with Tim Kaine. That's my own opinion. He's not a made noted any of that, but I think Lieutenant Governor would just probably suit him too. In any case, Jamie is a staunch and powerful conservative, constitutional conservative. She was the driving force for the first Virginia Tea Party convention held in Richmond. 2,800 of us came to that. From Erie, Pennsylvania, from Erie, Pennsylvania to I don't know where all, but boy, Virginia hit it big time. One of the best parts of that, and I'm sure it came out of her fertile brain, was near the end they had a 4-member panel. Steve King from Iowa, Rick Santorum from Pennsylvania, George Allen from Virginia, and they all came on the stage with nice, courteous rounds of applause. And they didn't even have to mention that the next person coming up the steps was Ken Cuccinelli. The place went nuts. He is a rock star. He likes this lady. With that, I ask you to give a nice welcome to Jamie Radtke.
I'm going to take Suzanne wherever I go. I have to tell you that probably one of the most beautiful things I've seen is driving here with the sun rising through Shenandoah. That was absolutely gorgeous this morning. And there was fog through the mountains, and it was lifting. And this has been one of the best parts about campaigning. We just spent a week in Southwest Virginia, and the leaves are starting to turn. We have such a gorgeous, gorgeous state, our Commonwealth, and so it's a real pleasure to be able to campaign. I'm going to be very straight and to the point. Let me just ask you a question, given the name of your group. Does the Constitution still matter in this country?
Yes.
It should. The Constitution still matters. That was the theme of our Tea Party convention that Suzanne referenced. Is does the Constitution still matter? If you look at Washington, D.C. and the way that it is working right now, if you have enough votes, you can pass whatever you want, regardless of whether it's constitutional or not. All you have to do is look at Obamacare. If you're the president and you can sign your name to the bottom of an executive order, apparently you can just do whatever you want. That is not the kind of government that we have. That's not what our founding fathers set up. They said that few and defined powers were supposed to be in Washington, D.C. Few, defined. And that the remaining powers are reserved to the states and to the individuals. I believe that this is a really true gut check time for America on that one issue. And if we can't answer the question of whether or not we still believe in a constitutional republic, then the country that we've always known and loved will be erased right before our eyes. It's a very fundamental question in Washington, D.C. and in these elections next year. Do we believe in a constitutional republic? And that's what this is about for me. That's why it says my tagline is supporting the Constitution and saving America from politicians. Because of that one reason. I grew up in a military family. My dad was an Air Force pilot, and we traveled every 3 years, picked up and moved. And before coming to Virginia in '83, we were living in West Germany during the Cold War. And we lived there. We lived in West, and my parents took us into East Germany. My parents took us into West and East Berlin. Took us to the Jewish concentration camps. And I saw something up close and personal that most people just read about in books. And to see the stark contrast within 100 feet of each other between West Berlin and East Berlin, between plenty and nothing, between freedom and tyranny is stark. It is stark. And this is before Google and internet TV and computer. So you were living in a vacuum for 3 years. And when I came back to the United States, as a teenager, having lived there my earlier years, I was just overwhelmed by the abundance in this country. Overwhelmed. I could not believe there were 5 fast food places at one intersection. It was beyond. You had to, where we lived in Germany, you had to drive a half an hour to find a McDonald's. And so it was just remarkable about all that we have in this country. And the amount of liberty and what our founders set up is an exceptional country where innovation takes place, where when people are allowed to unleash their creativity and be successful, what we have. And we're losing that on a daily basis. You feel federal government coming into the four walls of your living room like you have never experienced before. I can honestly say, as somebody, I graduated from Liberty University. I went and worked at the U.S. Senate. I worked at the Senate Foreign Relations Committee under Senator Jesse Helms, who was the chairman of the committee. I actually went and worked briefly with George Allen while I was waiting for graduate school to start. I have a master's degree in public policy from William & Mary. I've worked in the corporate world doing business and IT work. I've started my own business. I've done civic organizations, nonprofit work, and I've spent the last 4 years, homeschooling my children. And I've spent the last 3 years as chairman and leading the Tea Party movement in Richmond and for the Virginia Tea Party Federation. And I can say that through all that activism for more than 15 plus years, it was always about fighting a particular bill. I didn't want the gas tax increase. I didn't want the sales tax increase. They were killing pro-life legislation in committee. And I got so frustrated, not with the Democrats in Virginia. I got frustrated with the Republicans in Virginia. Because I had a Democratic governor that I expected to suggest tax increases. But I had a Republican-controlled House of Delegates, a Republican-controlled state Senate, and they were voting for larger tax increases than the Democratic governors. Larger. We had Republicans like Emmett Hanger, who was sponsoring in-state tuition for illegal immigrants. We had Republicans killing pro-life legislation. And the party had run amok. And I was very involved prior to the Tea Party movement, years before that, challenging these Republicans in primaries, which is how I know Scott. But never did I feel as though the entire America I've known is being erased. It was always about a particular thing we were pushing for. And never did I feel as though government were truly coming into the four walls of my living room. Now they tell us what health insurance to buy. They compel you to purchase products now. They compel you to what car you should own, what light bulb to have in your house, how to flush your toilet, food prices, gas prices, and the list goes on and on. I have heard Republicans say over and over and over again for more than a decade, I've heard Republicans say, we're mortgaging our grandchildren and our children's future away. I've heard Republicans say that when we had a Republican president, a Republican Senate, and a Republican House, of which George Allen was the leader, part of the leadership in the U.S. Senate, and the federal government grew 46% under Republican leadership, which is the largest since Lyndon Johnson. Since Lyndon Johnson, under that type of Republican leadership. This is a true gut check time. The definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and hope you're going to get a different result. We do not need more big government, the Constitution is relevant when it's convenient type Republicans. We do not need someone like George Allen, who's voted for hate crimes legislation, voted for ethanol subsidy, added $3 trillion to the national debt, voted for 40,000 earmarks like the bridge to nowhere, voted for the largest expansion of health care prior to Obamacare. This is not supported the Clinton-Feinstein gun ban. That is not conservative constitutionally Republican. You can say Jeffersonian conservative all you want. The record doesn't reflect that. We've got to move to people who are willing to think boldly and lead like Ronald Reagan did. He did not think small. Do you remember when he ran? He ran on a balanced budget amendment. He ran on abolishing the Department of Education. He ran on not just getting along with the communists, but destroying the communists. What do we have going on now? If you talk about bold ideas in the Republican Party, like Paul Ryan, where did all his friends go? He puts a proposal on the table to solve Medicare, the biggest elephant in the room for our spending, and people won't come to his support in the Republican Party. We've got to make sure that we realize what this election is about next year. This is not about a Republican majority. A Republican majority is what got us in this mess for the last decade. This is not about a Republican majority. This is about having the right majority in the U.S. Senate. And we have got to stop buying the lie of electing who we think is perhaps what we think in traditional ways is the most electable, or the person that can gather the most millions of dollars. Because that's what's gotten us the type of leadership we've had in the last 10 years. We have to break away from that mindset. So what would a U.S. Senate candidate look like that you would elect named Jamie Radtke, who would go up to Washington, D.C.? I want to ask the more fundamental question about what belongs in Washington, D.C., period. What programs and agencies belong in D.C.? What belongs at the state level? What belongs in the private market? What needs to go away? You cannot get out of a $15 trillion day by saying, I'm going to cut $100 billion. In case you were wondering, that doesn't work. And that was the grand idea from the Republicans 10 months ago. That was the big solution for the victory. We're going to cut $100 billion. That is not the kind of leadership that we need in Washington. You can't say, I'm going to cut 5% and everything's going to be better. It doesn't work that way when you're running a $1.6 trillion deficit every single year. Only in Washington, D.C. is the solution when you're in a hole to keep digging. And that is what they have done. They just did in the last 3 months, the solution was to keep digging. We're going to get ourselves out of this $15 trillion hole by we're going to dig some more. Only in Washington does that sort of mentality make sense. And we have dug our way to China. We have dug our way to China. We have made ourselves beholden to our enemies. That is sickening. And it has been done with the help of both parties. The largest spending since Lyndon Johnson under Allen leadership. That's not what we need. So what do we need? We need to look at things like, do we need a Department of Energy? No. Okay, I like the group. Look, 16,000 federal employees, 100,000 federal contractors. Are we more energy independent?
No.
No. The sole mission of the Department of Energy was to make us energy independent, created by Jimmy Carter in the 70s. That should be your first clue of why it's not working. What you need, what we need more than anything, is to elect somebody with a political spine that will go up there and say, we're going to drill for oil, we're going to mine our coal, we're going to access our natural gas, and we're going to build nuclear power. Thank you very much. I don't need 16,000 people to help me make that decision.
You need Sarah Palin as energy secretary.
Yes. I'll tell her that.
Please.
Look at the Department of Education.
No.
Do we need a federal Department of Education?
No.
Do we need federalized education standards?
No.
Do you really want education standards coming down from Washington, D.C. to tell you?
No.
Do they seem anywhere near being smart in Washington, D.C.?
No.
They can't even do simple math of how to balance the checkbook, and they're setting federal education standards. And we wonder why the test scores in this country have been completely flat, while the money goes completely out the window. That is an issue that belongs to local and state government and to parents. To parents. In the Virginia Constitution, most people don't know this, Article 8 of the Virginia Constitution says to provide a quality public education to every citizen in the Commonwealth of Virginia. You want to know who has the constitutional authority to provide education? It's Virginia. It's in our Constitution. Or look at Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac.
Ooh.
A total taxpayer bailout of over $300 billion. And of course, they keep asking for more and more money. And only in Washington do they go, you know, you've had 14 over 15 losing quarters, but we think the perfect thing to do would be to give you more money. We need to get out of the mortgage banking business. Why is the federal government involved in mortgage banking? Control. Period. Dot. Now, we as Republicans have said that we believe in free markets. But yet, we support things like Fannie and Freddie. And I will tell you that George Allen was given $16,000 from Fannie Mae to vote against the reform of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac when George Bush brought it to the Senate. That is not leadership.
No.
Ethanol subsidies. Do we or do we not believe in free markets? If we believe in free markets as conservatives, we have to stop subsidizing the private market. We've got to stop picking winners and losers. Because guess who Washington always picks? The losers. And it has unintended consequences. And I'm going to tell you something. The corporate cronyism that goes on in the Republican Party is just as bad as the union stuff that goes on in the left. And everyone out in the middle gets left out. We have to determine whether we believe in free markets. These kinds of questions are how you restore fiscal sanity. These are the kinds of questions we need asked in Washington, D.C. And then if we want to grow this economy, there's been a lot of talk about how to create jobs and grow jobs. I'll give you one big clue. It's nothing you've heard from Washington, D.C. in the last 6 months or longer. You don't grow the economy by sucking more money out of the private sector and making the federal government just a little bit bigger. That is the solution in Washington. If you will just give us a little bit more money, and if we can just grow the federal government a little bit bigger, and if we can just provide you a few more services, we can somehow make jobs appear. Every dollar you suck out of the private sector is one less dollar for the private sector to use. The federal government is crowding out the private sector, and it has to stop. If you want to really unleash productivity and innovation in this country, like we have not seen it in decades, if you want to put us on a level playing field with China, if you want to make sure that all the illegal immigrants in this country are paying taxes, then what you need to do is admit that the current tax system we have is 100% broken, thousands of pages wrong, and that it needs to be completely scrapped. You've got to get rid of the IRS. You've got to get rid of the income tax. And we've got to get rid of the alternative minimum tax. We've got to get rid of the Social Security tax. We've got to get rid of the Medicare tax. We've got to get rid of the corporate income tax. And we need to go to one fair federal tax. Fair tax is what is needed in this country. Stop taxing productivity. We need a consumption tax and get rid of all the other federal taxes. All the other federal taxes. We have the highest corporate income tax rate in the world, higher than communist China. And we have some of the most burdensome regulations. You've got to repeal Obamacare. Yeah, you know how many businesses I've talked to in Virginia who told me that the one reason that they are not hiring employees right now is because of Obamacare. They've said to me, Jamie, I have no idea what the true cost is to hire that employee. I don't know what the cost is to hire them. And so I can't hire more employees because I don't know what it's going to cost. You've got to get rid of Obamacare. You've got to get rid of the Dodd-Frank regulations that did nothing to solve the problem of what created this to begin with. And you have good businesses with great credit and can't even get a loan for those that are willing to take the risk to expand. And you have got to put the EPA on a very short leash. And it's not just the sort of the Republican rhetoric you've heard of, well, I'm going to oppose the cap and trade regulations. I mean, guys, that part's easy. That's sort of the Republican line. I'm going to oppose cap and trade regulations. The EPA is way beyond out of control just besides cap and trade. They are taking over private property. We have a huge infringement on private property right now that's being done through the UN and through the EPA, and it's got to stop. Yeah. You want to grow jobs, change the tax system, and you change the regulations. And I was in Southwest in Galax, Virginia. There's an American furniture maker down there. And he had told me about 8 months ago, he said, 8 years ago I had 1,850 employees 8 years ago. And he said, today I have 27 employees left. He said, I shut down my last factory. He said, we don't make furniture anymore. They had multiple factories. He said, we don't make furniture anymore. And we import everything from China. And he said, that's not what I wanted. That's not what he wanted. But what we do to the American business owner in this country is we tie their feet up, and we handcuff them, and we blindfold them, and we duct tape their mouth, and then we go out there and we kick them out there, and we say, hey, there's your free market, go compete with China. We control our tax and regulatory policy, which has nothing to do with free trade. It has to do with our politicians setting up policies that are killing American businesses. We've got to change it. And lastly, we've got to put some serious restraints on Washington, D.C. You'll see it in my brochure, but I've said over and over and over again that if you do not put handcuffs on Washington, D.C., it is clear that they cannot control themselves. The quickest analogy to give it to you to really solidify it in your head is that if this room was really drug rehab, and all y'all had a drug problem, and I put drugs on everybody's table, and then I walked out and I said, now I don't want anybody to use these drugs, but I'll be back in 6 years, and I want to see if anybody's used. What are the drug users going to do? They're going to use the drugs. Now, if I take a pile of money and I put it in front of politicians, and I tell those politicians, now don't spend that money, but I'll be back in 6 years when it's time for your re-election. What is the politician going to do? Stuff it in their pocket. They're going to spend it. We all know they're going to spend it. They don't ever sit there and say, we should pay down the debt. This is why Obama's proposal for taxing the rich is so flawed. Because they use it to keep everything the same. They never, or grow it. They never use it to pay down the debt. So we've got to have a balanced budget. I think we need term limits in this country.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. We need to give the states back authority to check the power of the federal government. It's called federalism. It's called the 10th Amendment. And it's pretty much been relegated to the trash can. But states used to have the power to check the power of the federal government. That's called federalism. You hear Cuccinelli talk about it all the time. And one of the things that has been my baby for the last year that I've been working on was something called the Repeal Amendment. The Repeal Amendment said that if 2/3 of your state legislators agree that you can repeal any act of Congress, rule, regulation, tax, Obamacare, any of it. And we got Governor McDonald on board, Bill Bolling on board, Ken Cuccinelli on board, the Speaker of the House on board. We had it introduced in 14 state houses this past election cycle, and we had it introduced on the House and Senate floor up in Washington, D.C. It's an idea that needs to grow. But I will tell you, there's a lot of things that need to be done in Washington. There's no silver bullet. There's no one proposal that'll solve. The only thing that's going to solve Washington is us. And we need to understand that Washington, D.C. is only a reflection of the culture. And we are having a crisis in this country about what is this country founded on. We know, but there's a battle to change it. It's a reflection of the culture and who's getting involved and who's participating in the political process. We've seen huge changes last year in the 2010 elections, but we're not nearly done. You can elect the best U.S. president that you think is out there, but if you do not have a conservative United States Senate, nothing will get done in Washington, D.C. Nothing. It is critically important that we put conservatives in the U.S. Senate. And we have lacked conservatives in the U.S. Senate. We need more Jim DeMints, Rand Pauls, Marco Rubio, Mike Lee, Pat Toomey, Coburns.
Jamie Radtke.
That's what we need more of. That's what we need more of. And unfortunately, there's only about 8 conservatives I would submit to you in the U.S. Senate. It's not just about the Republican majority, it's about the right majority. That's what it's about. And I will tell you this. We need people that are going up there to fight for a cause and not just interested in joining a club. Not just someone who's interested in going back up there and joining a club. Senator Mitch McConnell suggested during the debt debate that they abdicate their responsibility, their constitutional responsibility, and allow the president to just raise the debt ceiling whenever he wants. The Republican Senate Majority Leader didn't want to make the tough decision and said, well, let's just let the president decide. Then when that didn't work, the suggestion was, well, let's set up an unconstitutional super committee and abdicate our responsibilities once again. The same Senator Mitch McConnell did a fundraiser for George Allen as part of the Republican leadership. It is about having the right majority. This election next June, June 12th, will be a small turnout, more than likely. Because we're going to have a presidential primary in March, where you go pick your presidential nominee, and then you're going to have the U.S. Senate primary in June. We're going to have 2 primaries. I don't know the last time. I don't even know if we've ever had 2 primaries in the same year. It's going to be very unconventional, and people aren't going to be ready for it. So you can imagine the power that the grassroots can have in shaping this election. You can have a tremendous impact. I have, despite all the doom and gloom, the most optimism for what can be accomplished because I've seen what we've accomplished in Virginia in this Tea Party movement in a very real way. I mean, Virginians passed the Health Care Freedom Act that says you can't mandate health insurance in Virginia. And we had to pick up 5 Democrat votes in the state Senate. We didn't have to pick up 5. We had to pick up 3. We picked up 5 Democrat votes in the state Senate to make that happen. That was because of the Tea Party and the Liberty Movement. We have driven the national dialogue in this country. We've created and inspired Occupy Wall Street. See the kind of influence we have? Because people want to emulate us and replicate us. This grassroots movement is powerful because we have decided that the Constitution still matters. And if you agree with what you've heard and you're looking for someone to go up there that's going to stand up against the progressives, that's going to stand up when necessary against her own party, I'm running for the Republican ticket. I believe wholeheartedly, 1,000% in the Republican creed. What's been lacking is leadership and fulfilling the Republican creed. If you want someone who's going to look at what should a constitutionally limited government look like, if you want someone who's going to have a steel of spine to steel, then I'd ask you to look at my campaign. I'd ask for your support. We've raised almost $400,000 for this campaign so far, and we've received a number of endorsements from Republican leaders, from Tea Party leaders, from former chairmen of the Republican Party of Virginia, and we need your help. Because no matter how much money we raise, it's not going to be all the special interest lobby money that's being fed into the 2 top candidates. But what we can do is we can tell you every conservative, every Republican voter within a 5-mile radius of your home and ask you, help us get those people to the polls within a 5-mile radius of your home. This is going to be a numbers game because it's going to be a small turnout. So with that, I want to thank you for your time and letting me come and speak. And I don't know if you take Q&A. Okay. Yeah, I want to make sure.
We'll do some Q&A for about 10 minutes. Does that work?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, first question. Hands raised. Yes, sir.
Actually, I agree with everything I've heard, but one thing, the nuclear industry in Colorado couldn't exist for a second with overpowerful government having exempted it. Pick the winner, right? It's not an industry. An industry in the model sense is supposed to please its customers and cover all the costs of doing so. Of course, they've been exempted from most of the costs, basically. And you might think that doesn't fit into the rest of your philosophy.
Well, I also know that most of the services that have been provided, whether it's been ethanol, nuclear, all these other ones, have been done through tax credits because the tax rates are so high, and they've been given credits in order to move forward. And so, if you were to move completely to a consumption tax where there are no corporate taxes, there are no personal income taxes, you're getting rid of all this. It makes capital gains taxes. It makes it a lot easier for people to be successful in this country. The problem we have is you have the windmill, you have solar, you have a lot of these others, biofuels, that we are spending billions upon billions upon billions of dollars on, and that have negative effects on the market. When you have, for example, the corn industry, with corn ethanol, 40%, almost 50% of all corn produced is for ethanol. It impacts all the other farming, cattle farming, hog farming. It impacts the price of corn, chicken farming, and it impacts all the third world countries who are buying our products. So that's why I don't support subsidies, because as a general rule, 95% of the time, we're not picking the winners.
Next question.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Jamie, I'm curious what made you decide to run for the U.S. Senate as opposed to maybe a congressional seat or something in the state house?
Yeah, I have always done most of my activism at the state house, and I enjoy Richmond and living there and living that area. I'll tell you why, very specifically, and that is, it came to a point for me when I met with DeMint and talked to DeMint and Senator Coburn and Rand Paul and others and talked to them, that this isn't about what is our country going to look like in 20 to 25 years. That this was really about what is our country going to look like in the next 24 to 48 months. 24 to 48 months. And that some big decisions have to be made. And when I looked at people like Rand Paul, Ron Johnson, Pat Toomey, Mike Lee, all had never held political office before, and all ran for the United States Senate as their first election, and all won. Because people are looking to elect people that aren't part of that career political establishment. And so I ran because I have my 9, 8, and 5-year-old, and I don't know what the next 2 to 3 years are going to look like for them. If it were about the next 25, 30 years, I'd wait. But it's not about that. It's about what are the next 2 years going to look like. And I don't see any attempt to get our monetary policy under control, to get our spending under control. We lost our AAA bond rating. It's down to a AA plus, first time in the history of this country. And there's been no sense of urgency to cut spending. There's been no sense of energy to end the twist and to not have QE3 and all these things. And we just continue to drive down this road off a cliff and to switch between the left and right lane. And that greatly concerns me. So that's why, because of the sense of urgency.
Next question.
Yes, ma'am.
What entitlements just irk you to death?
Well, I guess there's a big debate about what an entitlement is. Because most people, it's their money that they gave the government, and they feel you've been paying into, for example, Social Security all those years, and it's your money, and you want your money back. So we call things, I really love that T-shirt. It says, that is too cute. That is adorable. So, we have welfare programs. We have programs like Medicaid programs that have completely blown up about who's qualified, who can be on them. We have people on unemployment now for 4 or 5 years. And I think that things need to change. Like if you're going to be on unemployment and you're going to collect unemployment while you're doing that, maybe you should do work for the government. You've got a lot of things that need to be done, roads that need to be cleaned up. You need to be doing something if you're collecting unemployment for the federal government. You need to be working. And the definition on the welfare and the definition of who qualifies for Medicaid. As far as irking, I don't know if irking is the right word, but Social Security and Medicare are broken. And this is part of the problem in the Republican Party, is they're absolutely terrified to talk about these two programs. And so nothing gets fixed because they're terrified to talk about them because of what the consequences could mean in an election. And that's because we really stink at messaging. We really stink at messaging. And what we need to go around and tell people is we need to say this very simple thing. We need to say, how many of you believe that your Social Security has been raided and stolen by the federal government?
Yeah, right.
How many of you think your Medicare has been raided and stolen by the federal government? How many of you have worried that at some point that money may not be there for you? You may not get your check. Now, usually most of the younger hands go up that side. Right? This isn't about how small or big your slice of the pie is. And this is what we need to be saying on the campaign trail. This is not about how big or small your slice of the pie is. This is about, is there a pie? That's what the discussion is about. Is there a pie? And if you believe the federal government has raided and stolen your personal savings and raided and stolen your Medicare, explain to me why you want your child to live through that same torture. Why would you wish that on your best friend, much less your own family member? They've stolen your money. Why would you say, hey, I got this great deal you should get in on? Honey, you put your money here and the government steals it. You should try it out.
They don't ask. They just take it.
That's right. But we've got to start debating, and we need seniors out there more than anything saying it's broken, it has to be fixed. And we've got to protect those that are paid into those systems, but we have got to have an alternative for people that are younger. You have to. It's broken. And they will steal the money. They will steal the money. And there's a lot of different proposals on the table. Cato's put stuff out. Heritage has put stuff out. You've heard Herman King talk about the Chilean model.
Do I hear a round of applause?
I think there's a little bias in the room going on. You know, he spoke at the Tea Party convention. Yes. Do I get a high five for that? I brought him in. But there are options on the table. Paul Ryan had the plan about the insurance premium plans, where you create, after you want to drive the cost down in Medicare. The quickest way to drive the cost down on Medicare is, it's a C word, it's called competition. And if health insurance companies knew that you had the right as seniors to choose whatever health care plan you wanted among 15 or 20, things are going to start changing versus if the federal government's contracting to provide medical services to every senior in the United States, and they only got to make that deal once. And so there are a lot of options on the table, but we've got to be willing to talk about them. And you saw what happened when Paul Ryan tried to do that.
Sandra?
Jamie, do you see any way that we can alter or change the ability of the Congress and the Senate to choose their own salaries when they get that they could get a raise whenever they want it automatically now? They don't even have to vote for it. There should be a way to control that.
Well, the last amendment to your U.S. Constitution, it was passed in the 90s, says that Congress cannot pass a raise without an intervening election. And so they have to vote on it, have an election, and vote on it again. So that was how they dealt with the pay raise. I don't feel like the pay raise is the big problem. They make the salary. I don't even know what it is. I'm going to run and I don't know what they make. I think they make over
140,000.
Okay. The problem is all the benefits they put themselves on, all the pension plans they put themselves, the different health care plans they put themselves on, the laws they exempt themselves from, and that's in my brochure that they should have to live under the same exact laws, the same exact health care, the same exact, all that needs to be the same as it is for everyday Americans.
I'm going to take question number
And then you're next.
Would you be willing to say that if you are elected, you will support removing pensions to stock career politicians? That we don't have to do term limits if we take away the pensions. It just seems like such a simple thing. How many agree with that?
I do.
Yeah.
I'm there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This gentleman right here is your next question.
Thank you very much for running for the position. We need more people, constitutional conservatives on that. My main drum that I beat is jobs. We have to make Americans become prosperous. We're even head before president. And our jobs have been exported. To create new jobs, to me, is not the need as much as to bring our jobs back. The only way to compete with a country who pays $1 a day is for everyone here to make $1 a day and to live on the same lifestyle level. We can't do that. We have to make Americans prosper. then you have more people riding the cart. And my only point is for you to comment on what I'm saying.
Okay. I would politely disagree that it all hinges on wage. And why I would say that is when a company is successful and what affects their bottom line, one is their labor, which is their wage, is what you referenced. The second is their compliance costs. Their compliance costs on regulations and their compliance costs with the tax code. The third thing is their ability to innovate and increase productivity and their capital costs, which is tied into that. And the fourth thing is the taxes. You got taxes and regulations and labor and your capital costs. Right now, our American businesses are 0 for 4, or 0 for 3. We continue to have great ideas when it comes to innovation, and we are now seeing ourselves, we continue to be the idea maker in this country. But now you see where in order for American businesses to do business in China, that they have to be willing to export their licenses on how they do these ideas, how they come up with these things. And so now we're going to be 0 for 4 as far as where we are with businesses. There's 4 things. We're 0 for 4. If we can control 3 of the 4, we're in a much better position. I've talked to a number of businesses all over this Commonwealth. If you can fix the tax system, the compliance cost alone for businesses to comply is $500 billion. If you can fix the tax system, the fair tax is estimated to repatriate, to bring back onto American soil between $10 and $15 trillion of American business back onto the United States soil by implementing the fair tax. That's a lot of business coming back onto the soil that's moved offshore. And if you deal with that and the regulations alone, we already have the innovation, then you're 3 for 4. Because people will buy a better product that may be even a little more expensive if they know it's a better product. I'll give you a perfect example. When you buy your clothes, people will make the decision to whether they're going to buy, whether or not they're going to buy something at, you make a decision whether you're going to buy something at Walmart or Target or the Limited. People are willing to make the increase in buying something a little bit better made when the margins are small, not when they're drastic. Right now they're drastic because you have a corporate rate that's in the 20s for most of the global economy, and ours is at 39. 20s, 39. That's a significant difference. And then you've got the regulations that are out of control. I think the quickest way to bring businesses to this country, back to this country, repatriate business, is to implement the fair tax. They say it will bring back $10 to $15 trillion of American business, because then their tax rate is the exact same as China. It's the exact same as India.
I'm not sure I understood what you disagreed with. Because I'm
sorry. I thought you were making the argument that it was all based on wage.
No,
that if we couldn't drop our wage, that we couldn't be competitive. So I apologize.
No, I didn't mean that.
Okay, I misunderstood you then. I totally misunderstood you. So,
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Jamie.
yeah, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anybody need to support Jamie through a